Welcome to the Freedom CEO podcast. It's about becoming the chief decision maker over your life in order to step into a life of freedom. From business, health, wealth, charity, and giving back to just doing life on your own terms. I am your host, Shay Mbediata. I am an award-winning activist, change maker, and a multifaceted impact entrepreneur with over a decade of experience in business, philanthropy, and health and wellness. In this space, I'm going to be bringing you insights, not just from me, but from incredible thought leaders around the globe to help you start making decisions towards living a life of freedom so you can live a life you love. Are you ready, guys? Because we are going all in. Today's episode is going to get you thinking and questioning how you are operating in your life. I sat down with Naturopathic Doctor, certified sports nutritionist, strength and conditioning specialist, Deanna Rose, who is also the founder of Wealth Inc. Deanna helps ambitious entrepreneurs heal the gut and realign their body and mind so that you can create a functional body and tap into your inner wisdom to become limitless in your business and personal life. Rooted in functional and integrative nutrition and medicine, Deanna designs programs for high-performing entrepreneurs who want their problems solved with minimal time and effort. In today's conversation, Deanna is going to tell you how to release the true power your human body holds while being the superhuman entrepreneur you already are. Get ready. We are going to activate your potential, reconnect you with your inner wisdom, and bulletproof your body to live a life on your own terms. We met at F45 when she would continue to encourage me to push myself beyond my limits, always with a beautiful smile, with great encouragement. And now I have been watching her be around the globe as this incredible entrepreneur and living her best life, creating this freedom that you can see. And she's just the perfect woman to be bringing onto the Freedom CEO podcast to share some secrets and value. I call her Dee. You may see her as Deanna. Dee, I'm so happy to have you here today. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Shay. And also congratulations on your new podcast. This is super exciting. I've listened to every episode. I love everything you do.
Thank you. Well, it's about time in some ways. Part of my joy that I really get is sharing other people's journeys, their stories, but also like that wisdom. And especially today when we live in like a social media world where we're always like showing up, I think, what we want the world to see. And sometimes podcast gives that ability to pull back behind the scenes and go, what's really going on behind that post? And what are some of those struggles? What are some of the hard things? And as you know, as an entrepreneur, you don't get there without those roadblocks, without the hardships, without the crying, without the struggle, and I met you years ago in Toronto at F45, and you were obviously still like in fitness and similar to like what you're doing right now, but I've watched you grow and really create such a cool and unique brand, which I really think can help people like me. I'm going to let you share. But Dee loves to hang out with entrepreneurs who have shot adrenals and are stressed out to help them regain balance in their body, in their fitness, even in their nutrition, mindset, all of this good stuff. So, Dee, would you share with us, what are you up to right now? You're tuning in from Colombia, but tell us, like, what are you doing right now on your journey?
First of all, the love is mutual. I think we inspire each other. You've always inspired me, and everything that you do with the advocacy you do and everything is super, super inspiring. With myself, I mean, I think, like you said, the journey has been interesting, to say the least, as every single entrepreneurial journey that everyone goes through. And I remember when I was a kid, I was actually born and raised in China, and I moved to Vancouver when I was 13. And my parents moved, and so of course they brought me with them, and didn't speak a word of English when I first moved, and went into this world of people who speak a different language and not knowing, what was what. But I used to travel a lot when I was a kid. My mom used to take me to different places, and when we moved to Vancouver in Canada, I remember just this resistance to learning English and wanting to speak English, but there was this feeling of wanting to explore the world more, even as a 13-year-old, really wanting to um, think differently and be different, because I start looking at, how people were in China, how people were in Canada at the time when I was a kid. And in my head, I remember the moment where I was like, there has to be something different about, people. And then so as I got older and older and older, I started to explore different avenues of, what am I here to do as an individual? What is my purpose? And this is all before I even discovered, spirituality, personal development, personal growth, like all of that stuff. And I it, growing up, I always had this really, really intense passion for mental health. And that's actually what I went to school for. Because I came from a family. I mean, I know everybody's family's crazy, but my family's pretty crazy. We all have our, crazy families. And there are a few people in my family who's got mental health issues. So that's always been my thing. So, you know, and so part of that is tapping into the parts of ourselves beyond what we know. And so, yeah, so I went into school for psychology, became a counselor, was working for the government, and then again, realizing that this is not it. There's way more beyond what we see. There's way more beyond what I've been told to go to school, get a job, have good, in Canada, we know as, having good, what is it called? Benefits, right? We want to have pension. We want to have security. We want to have this package that we know that will have security when we're 60. But I'm 20. I don't need to, slave my entire life for 40 years just so I can have some sort of pension when I'm 60. Right. So, and I looked into naturopathic medicine because I wanted to heal the mind through the body. And part of that was luckily for the facility that I worked at, which the food was absolute crap. And I wouldn't even feed it to my dogs. And I start, noticing patterns in the people that I was working with. So I was working with, murders, with people who had severe mental health issues, violent, really, I don't want to say this, but the worst of the worst in a lot of ways. And they were being sedated by the medication, the essentially lack of exercise, all these different things that are not conducive to the healthy development of a human being.
Right.
So I started looking into different things. I'm like, this can't be just it. So naturopathic medicine kind of slid his way into my life, and started looking into it, really resonated. And my grandma used to work in medicine as well, so in Eastern and Western medicine. So a lot of that was passed on to me in my family. And so I recognized, this is something that I really connected with. I went into it and realizing that that wasn't something that I was looking for. And I didn't see myself sitting in a clinic, 8-10 hours a day, being cranky, not having sunlight, and just it wasn't an environment that I wanted to work in. And I didn't want to face people that way either, because if I'm cranky, then my patient doesn't get the care that they deserve. So nobody's happy here. It's a lose-lose situation. So, and then this sense of, adventure and travel came in mind. And then that's when actually the pandemic hit. So pandemic hit, and I was sitting at home. I'm going, okay, I'm not going to work in a clinic. I can't go anywhere because I'm locked in. So I started working on my business. I started thinking about, how can I be remote? How can I have this freedom of, location, of time, of what I want to do, making my own choices in my own life. And I had a couple friends who just happened to move to Mexico in 2021. They were, talking about it. So I told my boyfriend, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go. And everybody thought I was just joking. Everyone's like, no, you're crazy. You're not going to do it. So I was like, after this, I'm going to go. So I literally packed my bags. I didn't know anything about the visa, about how long I could stay. I got to the border in Mexico and they're like, you need to have a return flight back to your country. So I literally booked a flight to San Jose in the Cancun airport. I was like, okay, here it is in 6 months. I'm going to fly out. And then so got into the country, had no idea where I was. And then that's when everything unfolded beautifully and in a way that I was least expected, in a way that it's almost like, the universe planned it. And the universe is like, just jump. We'll send help.
Yes.
So so I stayed for 6 months in Mexico, went back to Toronto because I love Toronto summers. It's beautiful. Went back. And then this year I was in Mexico, or actually 2022, the tail end of it, I went back to Mexico for a few months. And then I came to Colombia for a few months. And and I think this is something I'm going to do is, half a year in Toronto and then the other half go somewhere else that really allows my growth and expansion of my businesses as well as my personal growth and development. That was a long rant, but
no, it's great. And what I think is beautiful is that you are sharing the real process of what actually happens, like there's usually this internal struggle of like, I need to make money. We all need to make money. And that's like a good thing. It's a healthy thing if you've got a healthy relationship with money. And then it's trying to bridge this gap between also the life that you want to be living, so that whether you're currently trading time for money, at least you're doing it in an area that you want to be doing it in an environment you want to be in. And then as that starts to unfold more, you start thinking, how can I stop trading my time for money? How can I duplicate myself? How can I create passive income? And that's the next step. Mm-hmm. So I would love to ask you, when you landed in Cancun, when you landed in Mexico, the business you wanted to take online, had that birthed yet?
Yeah. So, the interesting thing, I don't know, I think this makes a good story. So in Toronto, the pandemic lockdown I remember this date so clearly because I had pre-planned my launch back in January in 2020. And I was like, I'm going to launch on March 26th. And I was training a client on March 16th. And the Toronto government was like, we're locking down as of this afternoon. And I was in my head, I was like, and I would assume that I can't swear. So I was like, crap. Oh my God, I'm launching in 10 days. What is happening? So it did launch. It was, I think maybe a year into my business. Yeah.
Okay. And so, and this is, correct me if I'm wrong, is this Glow and Tonic Studio?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
So the Glow and Tonic is actually my second business. The Wealth by Deanna Rose is actually the first. Yeah.
Okay, so you launching that, and at that time, when you were launching your business, was the plan then for it to be in-person work, that you were just launching your business, or was there already that online component to it?
It was always going to be online. The oh crap moment was everybody's panicking, everyone's in fear, nobody's going to want to focus on themselves, their health, and I'm going to be scrambling and thinking about pandemic, issues with my health business.
Yes. My goodness. And like fast forward, not even that much later, like going into April, even of 2020. And what a gift that you had all of this work prepared. You were ready to launch. You launched at the beginning of COVID, and health became the most important thing for most of us. You know, and also mentally. And you speak a lot about that, not just having a body connection, but like mind body connection and mindset for yourself. And that is really the first step to becoming healthy, is changing what's happening up in your mind and changing your thoughts. So I mean, you love this term, and I want to share this with everybody. If you hang out on Dee's Instagram, which I'm going to link it up everywhere in the show notes, you can see, if you are watching, you can click on or note it on the screen, and be sure to follow her, because you've got this incredible phrase that I think you coined around release the human in the superhuman. Where did this come from for you?
It came when I was meditating one day.
Right.
I don't know if that sounds cheesy at all. Many things come to me when I meditate, as most do. Because as entrepreneurs, yourself included, we're so driven, and we can multitask like no other, and we need to be multitaskers as entrepreneurs. And essentially, when you're so driven and you can do so many things at the same time, what the average human would look at us and say, well, you're a superhuman, is because we're so versatile. We have so much talent, skills. We have this thick skin, this hard shell. We go through things. We're so resilient. But at the end of the day, I think where the power lies is the human part of us. It's, and this is why I think AI will never be able to replace us, because they're not human.
Right.
And the beauty of us being human is the human component, is we have the ability to change our reality. We have the ability to manifest. We have the ability to create our future. And all of these amazing things is basically at our fingertips, is we can tap into it and become even better than being a superhuman. We can be human and be really freaking good at it.
Totally.
Yeah.
I love that. It's so beautiful. And it's a very powerful reminder, because, again, I mentioned earlier about like Instagram and what we want people to see. And that's usually the better side, right? Oftentimes, obviously there's great people on there that, they're crying and they're stressed and they're telling you and they're showing you, and that's great. But for the most part, it's like what we see on Instagram, we have to remind ourselves, they don't usually look like that. That their skin's not as smooth. Their body is not like that. The life is not as happy. Like, right. We all do it to an extent, right? Showing the best parts of us. But what makes us human as well is the contrast to all of that, and giving yourself permission to show up real, raw, and life isn't always rainbows. And so there are days where it is not happy and it's hard and it's sad, or you feel that you've taken so many steps back. Even I think of like your clientele that you would work with, where you have a goal that you're working towards. And we all know a goal is not a straight path. It is a very like diagonal, backwards, frontwards circles. How many times you feel like you're going around in a circle? And to dismiss that, right? And I think that's like where you put on this mask, this hard shell, like you're saying, you have to be so tough. You have to only look a certain way, this superhuman. We forget that it's actually the contrast of that makes us human. And when you say about around AI not being able to replace us, that's what made me think of it, because that's really the goal of AI, is around control and perfection and advancements, doing everything better. And therefore, if they can never have the contrast of screwing up, falling down, needing to try again, needing to sit in meditation and wait for that download of creativity, that download of thought, because it's already plugged in for them. Yeah, they will never be what we are, which is so valuable, you know, and it's part of what I like love about your work is you wanting to repair and bring back into balance like that which has been completely overburnt and depleted. And I wanted to ask you this because there's, as you know, you're in the fitness industry, you're in the wellness industry, in the nutrition industry, heavily saturated. And there's a specific type of coach, nutritionist, fitness personnel for every type of niche right out there. You can find that person. You have narrowed in on wanting to work specifically with entrepreneurs that are in overdrive, stressed, doing the daily grind and wanting them to return to their baseline and having that restorativeness within self. Why'd you choose them? Why'd you choose people like me?
Because I am you.
That's a good answer. Okay. I love that.
Yeah, because I am you. And, and I think, and then going back to what you said before is we put up this front, right, is because there are three things that as humans we need is safety, control, validation. Everything we do fall into those three categories.
Yeah.
When we have those three things within ourselves already, but we're always seeking it from external sources. So, as you said before, is everyone is looking perfect, polished on social media. I'm at fault for that too. Sometimes I'm like, I don't think people want to look at me when I just get out of bed. So I need to put some stuff on my face. But we're all at fault for that. But I think what people forget is the girls who have, flaunting their abs on Instagram, the girls who look amazing on Instagram. Myself, I'm saying this is what you need to do to get yourself out of burnout. I get sick. I cry.
Yeah.
I sometimes get to the verge of burnout. I'm like, whoa, I got to pull myself back. And I still go through that. In med school, though, I was burning out every other week. So that was a different story.
Sure.
So, and this is what I say about stress management is stress management, managing your stress doesn't mean that you have no stress. It just means that you're better at coping with stress. Your threshold when it comes to, dealing with stress goes up higher because you have the tools, you have, all these different things that you built within yourself to manage that stress. Same thing with burnout. Same thing with me is I recognize the signs. I recognize the early signs. I recognize, these are the things that I need to do to pull myself back before I go too far. So I'm exactly like you. I just got the tools. I got the recognition. I got the awareness. And I'm not saying that you don't. I'm not saying the people out there, they don't. It just is the little things that, you start to notice when you're in this industry. So just like you're in real estate, there are things that I might know as, a bigger picture type of thing, but the little things that industry experts know, and then I don't, right? So it's, I am you. We're exactly the same.
I love it. Okay, well, let's unpack that a little because you talk about backing out of this burnout cycle, and that sounds great, and it's much easier, I think, said than done. I shared, and this is real. You probably actually don't know this about me, but probably about 6 years ago now, I started really doing different body biohacks on myself because this was related now, fast forward, it was related to my implants, my breast implants that I had at the time. Though I had all this stuff going on around inflammation in my body, thyroid issues, my adrenals being shot, with that inflammation issues, weight loss issues. Now, there's many different things that impact that. So it's not solely that it was just my implants. You brought up real estate. That is not a stress-free industry. That is like around the clock, a grind. It can be very stressful. As you know as well, I have a nonprofit organization that fights human trafficking. That's not one of those topics that's light and fuzzy. That is heavy. It's hard. It's very ugly. And this January, it'll turn 14 years old. So it's been a part of my life for a very long time. So there's many compounding things happening in my life. So when I think about somebody like myself around knowing my adrenals are shot, still trying to, and it is actually part of my healing journey of being in Costa Rica, is allowing my body and my nervous system to heal, releasing a lot of the stress that I've carried, and not just stress. There's anger in my story, there's resentment in my story, there's hurt and pain in my story. Identifying myself as human, again, as we're talking, right? Like we all can share these commonalities. So we can use me as the guinea pig for our conversation today, because I think a lot of people can relate in one way or the other. What do you recommend to back out of this burnout cycle? What can I be doing?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the stories that you share in your podcast episodes, I've listened to those, and I actually didn't know that about you years ago when we met, and I was listening to the episodes and you were, sharing those really valuable, I think, experiences from you and very vulnerable facts about yourself. I think is absolutely amazing. And you inspire so many people, myself included. So, and I think everyone goes through this journey of this hardship, this different phases in life where we're led to, and I call it unpeeling the onion, the layers of the onion.
Right.
And what sits in the core is ourselves, is our true selves. But instead what we do is give me more layers on this onion so I can feel more whole. I can feel better. I can feel, more human, more complete, however people, think of it in their own minds. But rather what is really missing is us, recognizing that we already have it all. Just like what I mentioned earlier is the control, the validation, and the safety. So in terms of what you mentioned, backing out of it, and what I really advocate for people to do, and this is something that is so simple, but it's so hard to do, and this might even sound dumb to some people, is sit with yourself. Sitting with yourself. Because this is something that is huge for me, is I really value relationships with people, relationships with myself, relationship with my food, relationship with the place that I live in, relationship with the earth. And if you think about it, the reason why our nervous system is constantly overreacting is because we're always, as people know, in that fight or flight mode, in that sympathetic nervous system dominance mode. Yeah. And if we are in a place where we trust ourselves to have the safety, to have the validation, to have the control, many times, I would say more than 99.9% of the times, and when I speak to people about this, is they don't recognize that, they've already lost that connection with themselves. Right. They're constantly seeking external sources. I need to make more money. I need to please this person. I need to please my partner. I need to do this. I need to do this. Everything is external. But when we sit with ourselves in silence without distractions, which is so rare these days, we begin to reconnect with ourselves. We form that relationship with ourselves. We have that conversation with ourselves. Because imagine you and I, trying to build a relationship, and I'm constantly like on my phone, on my computer, watching TV, doing something else. I don't think we're going to have that good of a relationship.
Totally.
Right? You're not going to get your point across. I probably won't be paying attention to you. Even if I am, is not my full, genuine, complete attention. Yes. So in order for us to build the relationships human to human, in order for you to trust me to be there for you as a friend, as a colleague, as another human, I need to pay attention to you. I need to hear you. I need to be able to empathize. I need to be able to respond accordingly. Yes. So if one day you're like, D, I need your help, I'm in some real deep trouble, whatever it may be. And I'll be like, okay, I'm here for you. I got you. And from there, our trust continue to build. And it can be something as little as, hey, can you come and help me take groceries because I'm just really sick today. It's like something small like that. And for me to respond, you're like, okay, I can trust this person because she's got me.
Yes.
Same thing with our bodies. If I'm like, okay, well, I'm thirsty, or let's say I'm hungry, all I'm going to do is go out and get some fast food. Okay, let's just soothe you for the moment. And this is it.
Yeah.
Our nervous system is going to respond and say, well, actually, this is not what I needed, even though consciously we're like, I just wanted some fast food. But our cells recognize that we need nutrients. We're lacking nutrients, and you're not giving me the nutrients I need. So, okay, well, I now have trust issues.
Yeah.
And so, and I know this might sound woo to some people, might sound really simple, but it goes back to our nervous system response. Just like how the gut is related to the nervous system, inflammation is related to everything. How we respond to ourselves is very much related to the choice we make every single day, the thoughts we have, the neurotransmitters that we fire on a regular basis, the hormones that get released, how our gut heals itself, or rather have leaky gut symptoms that that lead to more issues. So one of the biggest things is to back out of that burnout state is to literally just sit with yourself and listen and connect.
It's so interesting because just the other week, this is real life, getting raw here for a moment with you. I'm in Costa Rica. I don't have a primary resident in Toronto anymore. I'm here. I'm going back. To make a long story short, there's a lot of stuff in my head that can be very overwhelming sometimes around where am I going to live? I don't have my vehicle when I'm there. I got to get a vehicle. Who am I going to be staying with? Anyways, all of this stuff. And I'm looking at, I have stuff in storage. I have stuff at my mom's place, at my dad's place. I have stuff at friend's house, other stuff in Prince Edward County. I was like, I get so freak right out right now. And there's this like overwhelming on top of everything else going on, right? Businesses, all everything else going on. And a girlfriend of mine called me that morning and she could hear it in my voice, this overwhelm. She's like, how are you? I'm like, I'm good, but I'm just a little overwhelmed right now. And she said to me, she's like, what could you do today to be with yourself, to take care of yourself? Now, my immediate response is, I don't have time to do that today. Right? I don't have time to do that today. And she's like, can you just find some space to relax and be with yourself and like tranquilo? I said to her, I was like, look out my window. My life is tranquilo. I'm looking at the ocean right now. I have an infinity edge pool. How much more tranquilo can I get until you're really convinced I'm 70 years old and I'm retired? Right? I said, I can't do that. And this is what she said to me. And as you were saying, around spending time with ourselves and not in the partner relationship, I think this is the easiest way for people to understand that what I'm about to say is she said to me, if somebody you were dating, your partner, your spouse said to you, I don't have time for that today, but I'm available on Friday to deal with your overwhelmingness, your anxiety, whatever it is you're going through. She's like, what would your response be? I'd be like, yeah, well, obviously it becomes obvious, right? You're like, well, that's not cool, especially if you're my partner and you can't take 5 minutes out of your day to be with me, to help ground me, help clear, recenter, do a body scan and go, what does Shay actually really need right now in this moment? And it's interesting because I think of people who are really actually uncomfortable with just being by themselves, like going to a restaurant. That's a great, great experiment. Can you go eat alone and not be on your phone or with a laptop to be like, I'm coming to a restaurant to do work and get a bite to eat? Like, can you just be with yourself and see what comes up? Right. And it's a very important practice. to also, like, as you were saying, discovering like really who you are. Because if you're not really hanging out with yourself and you're always distracted, whether it's through friends, business, events, the phone, laptop, Netflix, how do you really know who you are, and therefore even like what you want in life as a bigger picture question, right? So I love that part of the backing out of stress and backing out of burnout is creating intentional time to spend with yourself. And I know without needing to ask you, because I've seen as well, like you talked about this on Instagram, but you have your disciplines in place to support and serve that sacred time of gratitude, meditation, whether that's journaling as well. And those are things of being with yourself. You know, it doesn't have to mean that you have to sit there and like literally do nothing. If you're going to do that, then you should just meditate, right? Like at that point, you just meditate. But it's a really important reminder of like how we show up for ourselves to take care of ourselves. And if that was a partner's response in that time of whatever you're feeling, you're hungry. You know, you brought that analogy up of like what you're feeding yourself or not feeding yourself. And maybe if you thought of a mother figure as opposed to your partner, because maybe your partner's it's not their responsibility per se to feed you, but like a mom to a child that would just neglect when their child is hungry, you'd be like, yo, that's like child abuse. That is not okay. But when we do it to ourselves, it just gets dismissed as, oh yeah, I haven't eaten at all today, you know? So I think that's a really powerful reminder of creating this one-on-one time of intention and allowing yourself to have those resets, you know, as part of getting out of that burnout process, burnout cycle. So good. I love that. Dee, I want to ask you, there's this notion kind of going around of balancing hormones, balancing your nervous system. I have inflammation issues. I have stress. One definitely does not help the other. I don't want to miss my workouts. I'm huge on moving my body daily. Doesn't necessarily always mean lifting weights for myself personally. But there's a fine line that I keep learning and hearing about, that sometimes the type of workout or the length of workout is not necessarily serving my body if I'm in this state. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and how to best serve yourself in that way.
Mm-hmm, for sure. I mean, they're as a woman, it's such a blessing to be a woman, but we're so complicated. I love being a woman, but sometimes like, damn,
Yes,
this is complex.
totally.
You know, we have what the men have. We have the inflammation. We have all these things. And then on top of that, we have the hormones. We have the monthly visitor. And we have all these different things happening. So, you know, in terms of what you mentioned with the balancing hormone, with the inflammation. So in terms of, actually, let's back up a little bit. So in terms of burnout. So burnout essentially is, there are different, you know, degrees of burnout. It's a spectrum, right? So there's a mild burnout, and then there's a burnout which is for some, if you look up burnout, there are places that actually say if you're in severe burnout, it might actually lead to death. It's a little scary, but it takes a lot for death to happen. But essentially, burnout is you're in a state of, you know, imbalance, as we talked about before. Your hormones are out of whack. Things are, you know, thyroid issues might come up because your thyroid essentially is your thermostat. You're maintaining homeostasis within the body. And all these different organs are malfunctioning because your hormones essentially run the show in your entire body. So your hormones are out of whack, neurotransmitters are out of whack, the dopamine, the serotonin, everything's out of place. So one of the biggest things with burnout is, I'm sure you've heard of the adrenal glands and that sit on top of your kidneys. Mm-hmm. And every time, you know, when people talk about burnout, they're like, support the adrenals, support the adrenals. It is very important to support the adrenals, but one of the things that we also want to think about is, where are the adrenals at? Are they overworking? Are they underworking? Because sometimes in burnout, they can be underworking because they just don't have the ability to work anymore, because
Right.
they're just so, imagine a person who's just dead, not dead, but you know what I mean. They're
Yes.
very, they're passed out, they're tired, they're sleepy, they're passed out. Yeah. So that is a very strong word, sorry. um so they can't even produce any more work anymore, so they can't pump out the cortisol anymore. And they're, of course, the other side of the story where they're pumping out too much cortisol, so
Right.
the adrenals still have the ability to pump it out. So in both cases, then you need to start noticing, what your body's feeling after you work out. Because for a lot of people, they feel very depleted after working out. Then that means you need to back off and do something lighter. Walking is a great way to still move your body, still be able to, get some fresh air, get your body moving, get your brain moving, get your blood flowing. And you shouldn't feel exhausted afterwards. But if you're feeling exhausted afterwards, it probably means that your adrenal are just shot. They're no longer, operational. You really need to get them taken care of. Whereas, if you feel like, okay, I feel that I can go and do some Pilates, I can do, a little bit of yoga, I can maybe do some strength training, and I should feel better afterwards, then listen to your body that way, in terms of, how you feel afterwards. Because going in, for a lot of people, you got to drag yourself to the gym sometimes.
Sure.
But during the process, if you feel this motivation coming in, if you feel better afterwards, then continue doing those things. But the last thing you want to do when you're really burnt out and you're feeling depleted, you're having a hard time sleeping, you're having a really hard time getting through the day, the last thing you want is going to a HIIT class or something that is really high intensity, because then your adrenals are working overtime on top of what's already going on within your body. And in terms of, the female hormone system, on top of this burnout situation, on top of inflammation, is you gotta, really ease off during certain parts of the female cycle. So during your period, for a lot of people, and one of the things that I always ask is, do you feel better after working out, or do you feel worse? Because in Chinese medicine, there's something called the excess, and there's something called oh my gosh, I forgot the other word. Essentially, is too much and too little. So you're lacking or you're having too much. So for people who are excess and they need to exert some energy. So during the week of the period, some people feel better when they work out.
Right.
Other people feel actually worse when they work out. So those people are in a state of depletion. So they should go lighter on their workout. So that can be strength training, but when you're doing strength training in that period, if you're someone who is depleted, you want to make sure that you're doing longer periods of eccentric versus concentric. So you're actually calming down your nervous system, working with what your body has. And then the week after your period is usually when women can go much, much harder than the rest of the time of their cycle. So usually when your period ends, the next 7 days, you can go much harder. You can do your HIIT classes, you can go for long runs, you can do all these things that really is taxing on the body, but also because your body has the ability to exert, your body has the ability to put out the work that that is required in a workout.
Sure.
This is also the time you can take more carbs because your body can burn more. So, which means, you're going to work out, you're going to burn more calories, carbs, whatever it is that you choose to eat. Not saying that you should eat junk during this time, just, macros always shift as well during the cycle, as well as the workouts, as well as certain lifestyle modifications as well. So the 2 weeks usually before the period is when, we want to start tapering down on the workouts, start, really replenish the body with high nutrients, with, a lot of mindfulness, a lot of sitting still, because we're building that uterine wall, and we want to make sure that the body has all the resources to get things going, to make sure that we give it the resources, the attention, the love, and all these things, to make sure that, we have that, essentially all the resources for the body to do what it needs to do.
So interesting, because as you're explaining all of this, it's really making me think that doing one workout or a type of workout throughout the month, whether you work out 3 days a week, 5 days a week, you're moving your body every day of the week, that you should really be thinking about actually changing and shifting your workouts around your menstrual cycle from what you're saying, which is fascinating and does make sense, because I had a friend of mine years ago. She's very much around creativity and creating business around the cycle of a woman, which I thought was so fascinating. I had never considered this before, but to follow parallel to what you're saying, in the week of your period, where your body is needing more love, wanting to retreat, being with yourself, this is the time to, on a business side, not be going out and doing speaking engagements, not be trying to launch new programs or whatever you're doing in your business. This is a time to be inward, maybe working more in your business, on your business, versus ovulating, creativity. You have more energy like this. That's the time you want to be on stages. That's the time you want to be launching programs, doing high vibe interviews, and really pushing yourself, but your business forward. So this is so interesting to bring this concept within fitness and workout, and makes complete sense to me. So I love that. What a great takeaway to start thinking about not just carb cycling, changing how you're eating or how you're showing up in your business, but also how you're moving your body and shifting that. I want to ask you, is there a sweet spot or a recommendation for time and length of workout? Because, you hear, I used to be of the mindset, I still kind of am, I think, maybe you'll change this, where I'm 20 minutes to do a workout? What are you actually accomplishing in 20 minutes? I'm just kind of getting into my sweat at that point, sometimes, depending on what I'm doing. But it's is 20 minutes effective? One, is there that sweet spot where you're 30 minutes before, if you have stress in your body that it's overexerting and now maybe having a reverse effect? Is 40 minutes okay? 45, an hour? What is that? What's the time frame that you would advise or recommend for people to consider?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And that's definitely something that there's a lot of information out there on timing, on the type of workouts, as it's really confusing. But what I would say is, there is no, one type fits all, unfortunately. And everybody's different. Everybody is different. Just like the food we eat, I can be thriving on a keto diet,
Sure.
and the other person is dying eating all the fat. So, and they can be thriving on carbs, and I be blowing up like a balloon animal on carbs. So so every body is very different. And the best thing to do is to, of course, if you're a woman, really follow the cycle of, your menstrual cycle, the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, and everything we do in life. Just life itself is a cycle. We birth, we die, and then there's the rebirth, if you believe in reincarnations. There is the cycle, that women have every month, and everything's in this flow of life, essentially, is what it is. Mm-hmm. So with that flow, really think about, how your body feels during each stage of this flow, either from a month-to-month basis or from a year-to-year basis, because, there's the childhood stage, the puberty, and then we grow as let's just say women here, women go through this stage of, 20s, 30s, and we start to get into this perimenopause periods and this menopause period, and then we don't have our periods anymore. And, and then we start growing older, at testosterone's and estrogen ratios start at, balancing out. So all these different things, you have to take that into consideration when it comes to food, when it comes to working out. And what felt really good in our 20s might not feel so great in our 30s, and then it is not even doable in our 40s sometimes. And I'm not trying to put limitations on our capabilities with the age, with the decades. And I totally believe, we've seen those 90-year-olds who are doing like 10s and 20s of pull-ups, like good on her. Totally. But we're not. But another thing to keep in mind is they're the oh my gosh, what's his name? The guy who is a Navy SEAL, the bald guy.
I know, I follow him. I don't know his handle, but I know who you're
David
talking about.
Goggins.
Crazy. Yeah.
David Goggins. So, we look at people like that and we're like, how do you do it?
Yes.
And then there are people I actually know people who try to do what he does. Is not possible, but we have our own powers. We have our own uniqueness to offer the world. So the same thing with our workouts. Some people might be able to thrive on a 20-minute workout. They can go really, really hard. And we do really, really, really hard workouts. I personally don't even think I can last 20 minutes. There are workouts and I'm like, I'm out after 15 minutes, But if we do a long stretched out workout where, as I mentioned earlier, for example, if we do a 1 second concentric phase and a 4 second eccentric phase when lifting, that'll probably take you an hour to finish your workout.
Right.
And if we just do a quick cardio session, 20 minutes is done. Again, this depends on how you're working out, how your body responds to the working out, and how are you nourishing yourself in terms of food, in terms of thoughts, in terms of, how you plan out your days. Those are all sorts of ways to make sure that, you are taking care of yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally, spiritually, to make sure that you're recovering and gaining from those workouts. Because essentially we're working out for a purpose. Yeah. We're not just working out for the sake of working out. We want to be healthy. We want to live a long life. We want to, get an 8-pack if we can, right? So that's another thing is, what is the purpose of your workouts? What are your intentions going in? Are you trying to work on your cardiovascular system, or are you trying to get bulkier muscles, or are you trying to lengthen your muscles? So unfortunately, I don't have a one-word answer to your question. There are just a lot of factors to consider, but if I have to give one advice, it would be to listen to your body and see what feels good. You should feel like you're pushing yourself when you're working out, and you're walking away feeling like, what you said, I barely even broke a sweat. So yeah. Gotta do a little bit longer, or you increase the intensity if your body allows. So going back to yourself is nothing external. Always listen to yourself. It's going back to that connection piece again.
Totally. And I think as well, if you do one thing the same always, it starts to lose oh my gosh, it starts to lose its effect, right? Yeah. Because the body starts to plateau at that point because it's the same repetition. It's that muscle memory. So even just that, in trying to figure out, because I think of, well, how do I know what feels good to my body? Well, the only way you know what feels good to your body is if you try something else to compare it, and you have a contrast to be like, I did 45 minutes to 30 minutes. How does that feel? I'll tell you, this has been a really interesting exercise for myself, unintentionally, but this is real to what we're talking about. So, Dee, I want to share this with you because I think this is a really interesting, unintentional experiment I'm realizing I'm in. When I am in Dominical, in one area of the country in Costa Rica, I don't have a gym to go to. So I have equipment at my house and I do online workouts. Right now, I'm using Body, which is formerly Beachbody. And the program I'm going through is usually between 29 to 40 minutes workouts. When I'm in Nosara, I have a gym. I'm in there doing my weights, I'm lifting, usually not doing any cardio there. I'll use the beach, but I'm like just lifting. And I'm in there for an hour, anywhere between an hour to an hour and a half. What I noticed just recently was my body feels more swollen. I feel thicker than when I had for the last like almost month and a half when I was doing just these 30-ish minute workouts. So I came back here and I was like, this is going to be interesting to see now, a week before I go to Toronto, I'm back in the routine of doing it and how my body is feeling. Do I feel like I'm not holding on to water weight? I'm not inflamed. I think about stress in my body and everything you've shared. So this is what you need to do, right? You need to change it up, because if what you're doing, if you're wanting different results, you need to change what you're doing and try something different, right? And if you're doing what you've always done, you're going to get the same results. So this was like a really interesting exercise unintentionally. And so you brought up this fabulous point, which you guys need to try it, change it up, shift it up. I also think there's so much wisdom that you are sharing that you can clearly see the importance of why you need to work with somebody like Dee, because we are complex creatures just in general. And there is not one answer, one shoe fits all. And as much as you can learn, and you should do your own research, go online, absorb what you can. This is why we have different experts in different industries. It's why you should use a realtor to go buy a home, because you don't know what you don't know. You might know some things, like you said, but I'm the expert versus you. So no different than me needing to come to somebody like you to say, where's my blind spots? What don't I know? I didn't go to school. I haven't studied the way you have. And let's create something custom for me. You are doing incredible work all around the world. You're like living your dream. You're on the Freedom CEO podcast for a very fitting reason. So I have to ask you this one question before I have to let you go, because I value your time and we are going to have you back because I have so much other stuff I want to unpack with you, Dee. So when you think of becoming the own CEO of your life and taking ownership over your own decisions, how has that brought you freedom?
Everything. I think freedom is, having control over our own life and not being tied to the idea that someone else has implanted in my own mind. Thoughts that don't belong to me, that I've been brainwashed to believe, like so many things in our society right now in this moment. So the ability to decipher, first of all, which is mine and which is not mine is really important. And as you can attest to it, I'm sure, Shay, is that freedom is multifaceted, is not just location, is not just money, is not just time, is the freedom to choose, is the freedom to think about what I want to think about, is the freedom to travel and experiment and be able to use your body how you want to use it. So, I think it's just been such an amazing lesson and journey, and all the challenges, the hardship with that comes with entrepreneurship is so valuable. They're hard in the moment that you're like, I just want to get out of this, but one step at a time. And when you get to the other side, and I can attest to that, I've gone through so many times, is when you get to the other side, you're like, that was so worth it. It's like when you're hiking up the mountain and you're like, oh, this is so hard, I want to go back down. But then when you get up to the top, you're like, I am so glad I did this.
100%. Oh, yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Guys, connect with Dee. She's so amazing. Connect with her on Instagram. Get into the show notes. All of her contact information is there. And I thank you. Thanks for being here today and spending some time with me. And I cannot wait to have you back. And I need to see you in Toronto. We're going to make that happen.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much for having me, Shay. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning into the Freedom CEO podcast. If you got value out of today's show, I would love for you to leave a review, as it will help my show reach other people as well. You know what to do. Download this episode, click the like and subscribe button. If you feel like spreading more love, hop over to Instagram and share today's show in your stories. Remember to tag Shane Vidiata and the Freedom CEO. My DMs are always open, so drop me a line. I'd love to connect. Until next time, keep owning your decisions to live a life of freedom. Live a life you love.